Hey, budding lawyers, welcome to the podcast. Today we are going to have a chat with Mr. Animesh Bordoloi. Animesh holds a LLM degree from NUS Singapore in International Arbitration, and he had previously completed his BA LLB from NLU Assam. He's currently working as an assistant lecturer in OP Jindal Global University. Hey, Animesh, what's up?
Hi Prasanna, thank you so much for inviting me. I have been following your initiative since some time now, and I think it's very helpful to young lawyers and students alike. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so first, please make our audience understand like the key difference between arbitration and other modes of dispute resolution, because I think ADR people have learned, like people have studied in their law school, but there are very thin difference between each of the methods of dispute resolution. So can you just focus more on that? Let's start.
Yeah, sure. To understand the ADR mechanism in India, you'll have to understand that, even now we see that every now and then there's an amendment to the arbitration procedure, the procedure or the arbitration act that is happening, right? So that itself gives you a background that the system in India, although it's well established, but it's still developing, right? And to understand the difference between both all the processes, let's say for example arbitration, mediation, conciliation, the primary difference is that arbitration is a more formal process when compared to mediation or conciliation, right? But then again, you cannot take this as the litmus test. I'll give you a very small example. Now let's say when you take mediation, what happens in mediation basically is that two parties will themselves agree that they want to settle the dispute outside court. And let's say if you and me are two parties and we have decided the dispute now, and we go back to the court using the civil procedure code, and we say that, and the court says that all right, this dispute is settled between both the parties, I cannot now go and appeal on that very subject matter, right? So even though I say that mediation, let's say, is an informal process, the formality or the stamp of formality is given by the court, right? So that is one thing you'll have to keep in mind even when I use the word informal. Now, the difference between, let's say, a mediation and a conciliation would be the fact that in conciliation, it is a settlement, because you'll have a conciliator who will be appointed, and there'll be particularly a settlement rather than an agreement. In mediation, it would be a third party initiated settlement, agreement between both the parties. But in conciliation, a conciliator will be appointed who is an expert in that, let's say, particular subject matter. Now let's say if it's a construction dispute, the conciliator would be an expert from that construction dispute area, and that particular person will give you certain a draft. They will say, these are the conditions that you need to accept if you want to enter into a settlement, and then a settlement would be agreed upon, right? But when you compare this to arbitration, and in spite of the entire aura that is created upon it, but there are again critics who say that arbitration is basically an extended version of litigation. And I could talk about this all day, but to put it very briefly, you see these things happening in arbitration. I'll give you a very small example. In a recent amendment, when the time period for arbitration was reduced to 18 months, that is, that you have to basically settle an arbitration within 18 months. A lot of people did not really like that. Now, to think of it, an 18-month period for settlement of a dispute is actually a huge timeline, right? And normally, commercial disputes should be settled within 18 months. But now, if people have problems with settlement of disputes within 18 months, that itself tells you that they're basically also questioning the intention of arbitration, and the intention of arbitration is efficient and fast disposal of cases, right? So I think that is also something that needs to be taken into consideration. And as far as the process is concerned, I think arbitration becomes a more formal process because you have counsels from both sides arguing a matter, just like, let's say, in a court. It's just that in arbitration, it is a more private forum. You won't have any other audience. There's always the confidentiality factor.
Yeah, I was going to come to that point. Like, have you attended live arbitration proceedings Can you tell us how is it conducted, where is it conducted, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, look, I started teaching once I graduated, so I haven't been able to. I mean, it would be not fair to say that I have attended an entire arbitration proceeding, but yes, while being in Singapore, I was working for a law firm and as a trainee intern, and during that period, I had the opportunity. So I went to SIAC, and I had the opportunity to attend an emergency arbitration. So the emergency arbitration is basically a form of arbitration where parties approach before the tribunal, before actually a tribunal is constituted, for interim reliefs, right?
Mm.
So that is, you could say, before there is actually an arbitration taking place, it's a pseudo arbitration that takes place. But pseudo is not exactly the correct word. But I had the opportunity, and what happens is you'd have like a court, you'd have a judge. A judge here would be the arbitrator, of course. You'd have either 1 or 3 or 5 according to the whims of the parties and what they agreed on. But again, similar to courts, there would be 2 counsels or 2 parties, and either party would have their own counsel. They would normally have a law firm or a famous counsel, and they would argue their point. The only, and similar to court, there would be evidences that would be shown. There would be documentary evidences. There would be witnesses. There would be everything. The only difference is that the court is a more public forum, and the arbitration becomes a private forum, right? So I think that is the only difference. And just to give you a very small backdrop of it, I had attended a conference way back, and there was this very famous vice chancellor, and he's a very well-known academic. I wouldn't want to name him, but he and now it all makes sense to me, because I think then I was too young to understand it. He talked about the idea of privatization of justice, right? And you could say that arbitration is nothing but that very fact itself. Now, whether it is good or bad is for the people to decide. I would not comment on it. But if you look at it from that point, it is actually bringing justice within a private forum, right? You are bringing it from the court, which is a public forum, to a private forum that is a room with all confidential lities being taken into consideration.
Yeah, and one major difference is that the procedural aspects are much different. Like the procedure is much faster than the ordinary courts, right?
Yeah, that is. I mean, but the point is, I completely agree with you that the idea of arbitration is to have faster procedures. But then, in a more realistic scenario, I think we are somewhere, we have this idea that there is always a delay that takes place in the courts. Maybe whoever, I wouldn't want to say that is because of X or Y, but that same thing happens in arbitration as well. There's always excuses that are being given that delays the proceeding. So yeah, that is also that also exists in arbitration. So, yeah.
Okay, I got your point. How are arbitrators addressed by the lawyers?
So they mostly say it's Mr. Arbitrator. They use the word arbitrator to mostly address them. That is how they do. At least in the proceeding that I was there, that is how they do. Yeah.
Okay, so what type of matters are usually suggested for arbitration, from what you know?
I think arbitration is a more forum, is a means that is used mostly in commercial disputes. For example, let's say in all kinds of commercial dispute, it could be a contractual dispute, it could be an agreement that's been entered into 2 parties, 2 companies, or construction disputes is one area where arbitration is very widely used. Mostly commercial disputes. Unlike mediation, you also, in mediation, you see it in commercial disputes, but you also see its application in personal spaces as well. For example, in cases of divorce and marriage, you see the application of mediation as well. But arbitration, I think, is mostly used in the commercial space.
Achha. Do you think it is widely used in India, like arbitration?
Absolutely. I think arbitration is very widely used. But, again, coming into that point, there are very different ways, I think, in which arbitration is used. For example, if you move into the metropolitan cities, let's say if you go into Mumbai or Delhi, you would see that arbitration are mostly huge arbitrations. There are $1 million arbitrations that is happening on a daily basis, right? But let's say if you move into the smaller cities, let's say if you go into Jabalpur or you go to the Guwahati High Court, you'd see that arbitration are happening there as well. But maybe the quantum of money that is associated is less. But again, I think if you ask me the idea of arbitration, yes, it takes place to a great extent. I think more than arbitration, it is the interim measures that are been taking place in a more frequent measures, more frequently. So I think, yeah, but to answer your question briefly, yes, arbitration is very widely used in India today.
Okay, so it's not something very new, or it's quite familiar with all people, litigators and lawyers.
Yes, it is. But there's one thing that I would address here though, and this is from my own experience as well. What happens is, even if let's say there are two parties that have an arbitration clause within their contract, there is always this attempt by at least one party who, let's say, if I initiate an arbitration by giving you a notice of arbitration, there would always be this attempt from the other party to say that, this arbitration clause should not exist, so we should rather go to litigation. So why I'm telling you this is, even though the arbitration's idea is to dispose of the case very quickly, but because they go to court, it takes at least 6 to 1 year to settle that dispute. And once that dispute is settled, before the court actually gives a judgment, the party that started the arbitration will ask for interim measures. After 1 year, then they'll initiate the arbitration. So that takes a long process as well. So I think it's a mixture of the judicial process plus arbitration that is happening in India currently.
Yeah, and in short, the purpose of arbitration is not fulfilled. Right?
Yes, most of the times. Yeah.
Okay. So let's now move on to Singapore. Okay, you did your masters from NUS Singapore. Any specific reason for that? Because usually people prefer to go to UK, US, and study law, do their masters over there. So what was your reason to go to NUS Singapore?
I actually had quite a few reasons. Singapore in Asia is the hub of most commercial disputes. If you look into maybe a chart, or if you research on it, you would see that most of the Indian disputes are referred to Singapore as the seat of arbitration. And because Singapore has SEAC, you see most of the commercial disputes happening there. So that was one primary reason. The second was that the quality that NUS provided, in spite of being in Asia, was amazing. I had wonderful faculties teaching us throughout the process. We had someone like Gary Bond, we had Kaufman Kohler come and take classes. They were guest lecturers, but we also had in-house faculty from NUS who were excellent. We had Professor Jean Ho and Professor Gary Bell, who are renowned names in international arbitration. So I think that itself was a motivating factor. Another very important factor, I think, that I don't know if people consider this, but I did, was how big the country was. And why I tell you this is an important factor is because Singapore is such a small country, right? What it offered me was, if I'm taking a class at from 9 to 12 in the morning, if I have a seminar or a conference at, let's say, 3 in the afternoon, I could attend that as well. So that helps you is networking, right? So networking also plays a very significant part of your master's journey. So I think Singapore offers this very conveniently. Also, I think I took the monetary aspect into consideration. In spite of Singapore being a very expensive country, I think it is less expensive when you compare it to, let's say, a European country. So I think these are the factors that I've taken into consideration while choosing NUS. And its ranking, of course, is another just icing on the cake. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard about that university. So why didn't you prefer working there in Singapore after your masters?
Again, there are quite a few reasons. Primarily also because we were hit by the pandemic while being in Singapore. So, we were in a scenario we had to come back. But having said that, I also wanted to first I had done my master's directly after my undergraduation. So, going by that, if I would have gone to a firm, the nature of work would have been very different. So I wanted to explore more options before getting into a firm itself. So that was also one of the personal reasons. But, overall, I think the pandemic also pushed us out of Singapore towards the end.
Okay. Can you suggest any other universities people must look for if they are considering a career in international arbitration? Like NUS is one good option. Apart from that,
I think apart from NUS, there is the MITS Geneva program, which is really nice. But I think it also has, you have to understand that the MITS program offers you a course, I think, only after you have certain amount of experience. But again, I think NUS has some kind of an understanding with the MITS Geneva program. So I had a classmate who, after completing her master's from Singapore, went to the Geneva course, right? So it's a dual degree program. So that is also a very good program. Then you have Pepperdine University, which I think also offers a very good international arbitration course. So I think these are some of the renowned programs in international arbitration. There are also, of course, other universities in UK which do offer international arbitration, commercial arbitration to be more precise.
And these universities which you just suggested are in Asia itself or in Europe or UK?
No. These are mostly European universities. I think, in Asia, if you ask me, Singapore, of course, offers. Singapore, there are a number of institutes which offers actually. Other than NUS, there is the SMU, the Singapore Management University, which has a course in arbitration, if I'm not wrong. Then there's also one in Hong Kong. So in Asia, I think these are three very good universities that offer arbitration.
Cool. How was your overall experience in NUS? Any specific thing which is very unique or you liked a lot about that university you would like to share?
I think there are quite a few factors that played into it. I think, as I told you, the faculty was amazing, so they were always there to help. There were faculties who helped you throughout the process, be it in research or be it in any other problem relating to academics or in your profession. That was one factor. I think Singapore is also a multi-dimensional country. It offers you a lot of perspectives, from food to people. So I think I like that as well. With regards to the university particularly, I think that it gave you a lot of options because there were actually two campuses. We had the public policy students as well. So I think it offered you different dimensions with regards to that. I think other than academia, the fact that Singapore was such a small country, it also allowed you to explore the region, which I think is also very important when you go to a master's program. So I think I liked overall the package of Singapore a lot, I think.
And you said there were two campuses. So one was a separate campus for policy school courses, like the university has two such schools. One is public policy and the other is law. Is it like that?
No. So what happens is, the law school and the public policy school are together in the old campus. So that is the Bukit Timah campus. And the new university is a little far away, but they have bus services, running throughout the day. But the law school is in a more, you could say, in a heritage site. But the new campus has now moved on to a new place. So, but those are two different campuses.
New campus has which school is there?
You have all the schools there. Let's say, for example, the management school, the engineering school. So all the schools are there except for the public policy and the law school.
Law school. Okay. So if we talk about India now, so do we have any LLM programs in India specializing in arbitration only?
From what I know, Prasanna, I don't think there is. But from the little that I know, I think there are a few universities, private universities, which offer an LLM in arbitration. I'm not sure if they are still running. There are a lot of diploma courses though in international arbitration. And from what I know from my friends as well, if you take, let's say, a commercial law specialization in your LLM in India, they have an elective or a subject as ADR. But if you ask me, an LLM and international arbitration, I don't think it exists in India.
So hopefully we'll have something in future. Let's see.
Yeah, I do hope, because it's so many Indians are going abroad. I think having that course in India itself is beneficial to a lot many people actually.
And it will also encourage arbitration more in India.
Yes, absolutely. It will create it will fulfill that gap of academic as well as professional development in arbitration.
So is studying arbitration in some other country better than studying it in India? As you said, like we don't have a proper course, but doing this diploma and other courses which along with the LLM, does it make any difference for those lawyers who want to work in India only and not in any other country?
Yeah, talk about it, because arbitration is such a practical course. It doesn't really matter whether you take it from India or from another country. But having said that, you'll have to also keep in mind that, let's say, if there's a course in India that deals with arbitration and somebody decides to take it, how that course actually is, whether that course is able to bring the top 10% or 15% arbitration practitioners to teach in India is also a very significant point, right? So I think, because if you are taking a master's, you basically want to notch up your level to some extent, right? So that is also something that you might have to consider. Having said that, there are practitioners in India who are doing very well, not just in India, but throughout the world, right? So even if you could attract that talent, maybe then even if you learn arbitration in India, it doesn't really matter. But again, as I said, it's because it's a practical course. Let's say if you're not very inclined to the academy of arbitration, if you are more into the practice of arbitration, even an LLM degree or not having an LLM degree is not that big a difference, right? In most cases, because
Yeah.
LLM
So basically,
you'll have to understand is
we can say that
academic degree.
we can say that it's like litigation. Like the more practical experience you have, the better you are. You will become a pro if you have more practical experience rather than just having some degrees.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me whether I know more than a person who has been involved in litigation plus arbitration for the last 5 years, the answer is no. But the reason for my master is to have that academic understanding of arbitration, which is different from practical understanding of arbitration. That is something that we all have to keep in mind before we pursue a master's.
Okay, so as you were talking about this online thing, what is your take on online arbitration or online dispute resolution? Do you think it is more efficient, or things are better when it's offline?
I think this is a question that has been asked many times, and given the pandemic now that so many physical hearings have now been converted into virtual hearings, the question, I think the debate has started once again. But having said that, I think the ODR platform is a very different platform. Let's say because let's say if there's a physical hearing that was taking place and now that's been converted into an online hearing, the parties will contest firstly the seat of arbitration, which becomes such an integral part, because there are so many factors that could come into it, whether the technology available to both the parties is same. Let's say one party is sitting in a third world country and the other party is from, let's say, some first world country, whether the access to technology would be the same, because there's so much of confidentiality. It's not like you could just use, let's say, one of the apps that we use for video conferencing in an arbitration. There's just so much that goes into it. But when you compare this to the ODR mechanism, I think it's a developing area. You could see more of ODR, let's say, in consumer disputes or in disputes where you don't really need two arguing counsels, right? In that case, you could see more of the ODR coming up in the times to come. But the problem is, even if you, let's say, have those consumer disputes being conducted through the ODR mechanism, there are a lot of complaints that come in. In India, if you see historically, consumers prefer the consumer forum rather than using the ODR of a big multinational company, because they still think that their side of the story is not being heard. So then the rule of law comes into question, right? So these are greater ideas, I think, that needs to be focused upon. But I'd end with this. over the last 2 years, 3 years, there's been immense development, especially with the development of blockchain technology, with the rise of cryptocurrency, things like that now, because there are such safe ways through which you could address arbitration, because now there are locked files there. The mechanism is so different from now with regards to ODR. If they can implement these technologies in the later stages of ODR, I'll not neglect the idea that ODR can actually become as important as physical hearings in arbitration, but that needs to be implemented. How it's implemented, it only time will tell. Maybe.
Okay, good insight. But if we look at it as an overall ADR, do you think arbitration specifically is more effective considering the costs involved there? Because in arbitration, there are a lot of costs involved, as from what I have heard, the fees of arbitrator and all, or sometimes it also goes in lakhs for hearing particular hearings. So what do you think? Like, spending so much, is it effective?
So I think you have basically entered into the Pandora's box here, because the idea of arbitration initially was to have a more effective and cost-effective means of dispute resolution. But over the years, we have seen that it really hasn't remained that, and it's because it's now such a demanding area of dispute resolution. You see councils, whether firms or councils or even arbitrators, charging a lot. And I think the basic example of this, you could say, stems from the fact that very recently, India had to actually bring up an amendment which regulates the fees of arbitrators, right? So that itself gives you an insight into the fact that maybe the idea of arbitration being a cost-effective mechanism hasn't remained so. So yeah, I think, and this has now actually become a very disputed argument as to whether it is cost-effective at all. The charges that happen are ultimately as much as litigation, or even more sometimes. So yeah, that way I think it hasn't remained that so whatsoever.
So I guess people involved in arbitration proceedings, lawyers and all, can make good memes out of this whole procedure of arbitration.
Absolutely. I mean, there are lawyers who just do arbitration to do, right? There are judges, retired judges, who do a lot of arbitration, and you have to understand that if there's a judge who has worked for 65 years of his life, he won't come cheap, right? He won't come for 1 lakh rupees. He would of course demand what's deserved of him. So I think one way though to address this is something that India needs to. I mean, it's not like a statute will have to bring it up, but I think the mechanism has to change. So, and this is, I think, one such thing that I found in Singapore. And when I saw in Singapore, I also researched of the other backgrounds. If you see, let's say if you see in UK, academicians become arbitrators, right? In Singapore, let's say academicians are arbitrators. We had a lot of academicians. There was Professor Benjamin Hughes, there was Professor Lawrence Boo, who are very famous academicians, but they are also involved in the process of arbitration, and they're also very famous arbitrators, right? But if you look into India, that is not something that really happens. You don't have academicians being appointed arbitrators regularly. There might be an exception, but that has to start. I think, you have to allow a more flexible regime. So, if you have academicians come into the fray, then when you take this socio-economic factors into consideration, maybe only then you can address this issue of cost effectiveness of arbitration. So I think it's a larger issue rather than focusing on one amendment that, tries to regulate the fee of arbitrator, because the arbitrator can, even if you take fees, the arbitrator, if I'm an arbitrator, let's say, I can have 100 other means of asking money, right? I could say that, 15 lakhs is my fee, but you'll have to arrange for all my accommodations, all my travels, things like that. So I think that's a larger socio-economic aspect into it.
I think that must happen, so that even we can see in future Mr. Animesh sitting on an arbitrator seat someday.
that I don't know, but I'll never say no to that.
Okay, so over to our last question. Please share an incident from your career which is very memorable to you.
Oh, that's a difficult one, Prasanna. I think there are a lot of instances, but because it's a because it's a show that deals with young lawyers. This is particularly one thing that I would say, that I've seen over the years that being hesitant and being shy doesn't really work in law. You'll have to approach people, and in your career, if you keep on trying to talk to people, you will obviously in your profession, I think you'll always find people who will help you out in the process. So one memorable instance was while in Singapore. I went to a conference, and because you said itself that I come from National Law University Assam. I was studying in Assam before this, and I did not really know anyone in Singapore, at least in the field of law. And I just happened to talk to one of these partners who was speaking at the conference, and that partner was a very renowned name in international arbitration. When I met that partner in Singapore, there's this you could say there's this system where, whether it's a partner or anyone, they give you their business card, right? So that you could always stay in contact. So I just happened to write to that partner after a few days, because I was following a case that the partner was doing, and the partner was so kind to actually reply and asked me if I was actually interested to work. And that is how actually I ended up having that training internship with that firm. So I think that was very memorable, because when I was in India, that is not something that I had experienced before. So as a law student back then, I think that was very memorable. And the message that goes around with it is, you'll always have people like this who'd be willing to help you if they see that you are interested in your area of work, right? So I think that is very important to show your interest. And once you do, you never know where the positives lie, right? So I think that particularly for me was pretty memorable as a law student, back then.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, getting some such help, especially in a foreign country, it will be a memorable thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Animesh, thank you so much for this informative conversation and sharing your experience with us. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If this episode added some value to you, then please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. Also, you can also check out our other episodes available here, and follow us here so that you don't miss out a new episode. Thank you.